You know, nobody talks about how uncomfortable or scary it can feel when you finally start choosing yourself, especially for the people who have known you closely for years. Because when people are accustomed to having a certain version of you, your boundaries can feel like a change that they weren't prepared for. You're saying no when you used to say yes. You're limiting access when you used to always be available. You're making decisions without asking everybody what they think. And sometimes people just don't know what to do with that version of you. Not because they necessarily resent you, but because they just haven't learned how to relate to that version of you yet. Welcome to Sweet Lies and Bitter Truths, where the lies are sweet, the truth is bitter, and the tea is always piping hot. I am your host, Akenda Laru. If this topic resonates with you, be sure to grab your cup of coffee, your tea, your favorite snack, and don't forget to grab your pen and paper, because in this week's episode, we're talking about what happens when you stop abandoning yourself just to remain connected to other people. And let me tell you, choosing yourself doesn't always feel empowering. Sometimes it can feel like grief. Let's talk about it. The sweet lie is, if people really love you, they'll automatically understand and celebrate your growth. But that's not always true. Sometimes people become comfortable with a particular version of you. The version of you who always answers the phone. The one who always says yes. The one who always makes accommodations just to keep the peace, even when that peace means disturbing their own. And when that version starts disappearing, some relationships change. Not necessarily because they're bad people, but sometimes the relationship was built around a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. Now let's talk about the bitter truth. Some people will experience your boundaries as rejection because they benefited from you not having any. Ooh, honey. And I had to sit with that one because there are people that I had to walk away from without giving them any explanation. I've unfriended people, I've blocked people, I've simply stopped giving certain people access to me. And sometimes I still catch myself wanting to explain why. I want them to understand. I'm not angry. I'm not trying to hurt anybody, and I'm not punishing anyone. And then I have to ask myself, why do I feel a need to explain myself to these people? Why do I still believe that everybody has to understand my decision before I'm even allowed to make it? Let's take today for example. I had a friend come to me and they was talking to me about the topics of my podcast and how it really gave them food for thought, right? But then they even took it a step further and said, you know what? I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. But girl, if it was me, this is what I would do. Now, there was a time when I would have taken her advice or anyone else's advice, and I would have been like, okay, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. And I would have taken their advice and completely reassembled my podcast to fit their vision for my podcast. But I was like, absolutely not. And I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. So I was like, you know what, sis? I appreciate your advice. I thank you so much for your support. But if you decide to do a podcast, you can absolutely do it your way. But for me, I'm just starting out. This is new for me. And this is what is working for me right now. And I'm sure that, I'm going to be working through some things over time. But I have to feel my way through it. Give me time to navigate through it on my own versus abandoning myself to meet the expectation of somebody else. And that is something that I'm still learning because people pleasing can become a trauma response. You learn to read the room, keep everybody comfortable, avoid conflict, make yourself useful, make yourself agreeable, and make yourself easy to love. But there's a difference between wanting the people that you love to be happy and believing that their happiness is your responsibility. I mean, of course I want the people in my life to be happy, but no longer at the expense of my own happiness. I've been there, I've done that, and I'm choosing differently this time. Now let's move on to today's tea reflection. Where are you still abandoning yourself because you're afraid someone won't understand the person that you're becoming? I want you to sit with that for a minute. Because maybe the guilt that you're feeling isn't proof that you're doing something wrong. Maybe you're simply doing something different. Maybe you're learning how to choose yourself for once and not asking for permission to do it. Now, before we conclude this week's episode, I like to leave you with one last sip. Choosing yourself doesn't mean that you stop loving people. It doesn't mean everybody that you leave behind is toxic. And it doesn't mean that you suddenly become selfish. Sometimes choosing yourself simply means I can't keep betraying myself just to maintain relationships that require me to remain someone that I've already outgrown. And yes, you may feel some grief with that, and your circle may change. The people that you thought would be there forever may start feeling like strangers. But everything that hurts can also heal. And maybe the goal was never to choose yourself over everybody else. Maybe the lesson was simply to stop choosing everybody else instead of yourself. And that's the bitter truth. In conclusion, I'd like to take this time to thank you for your time and your support. If something in today's conversation made you pause, made you question, or made you see something differently, then this episode did exactly what it was supposed to do. Take what resonates, sit with what challenges you, and most importantly, keep asking better questions. Because sometimes the sweetest lives are the ones that we believe the longest. And the bitter truth, that's usually where your freedom lies. I'm your host, Akenda Laru, and I will see you next week in another episode of Sweet Lies and Bitter Truths. Bye for now.